Somewhere in a 1930s factory, a machine was being built that would quietly outlast everyone who made it, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how, piece by piece, it came together. Before this machine existed, cleaning a house wasn't a chore you finished in 20 minutes. It was a full day's labor, done on your knees, with a broom, a rug beater, and whatever strength you had left by evening. Once considered a luxury item mainly owned by wealthier households, the vacuum cleaner by the 1930s was about to become something nobody had predicted. A machine that more households began to see as desirable and increasingly practical, built inside factories that were quietly rewriting how household goods were made. Manufacturers had one straightforward idea: replace generations of manual scrubbing with a single motorized device that did the work in a fraction of the time. It sounds obvious today. In the 1930s, it was about as radical as suggesting a machine could take over one of the most exhausting household tasks in the home, and somehow not blow a fuse doing it. This video takes you inside a real 1930s vacuum cleaner factory to uncover exactly how these machines were built. The materials, the motors, the workers, and one manufacturing stage where every machine had to prove it was ready before reaching a family's home. Stay until the end, because that testing stage tells you everything about how seriously this industry took its reputation. Right now, let's step inside. By the 1930s, the vacuum cleaner had outgrown its clumsy, experimental beginnings of the early 1900s. It was becoming a genuine household appliance, and manufacturers like Hoover and Electrolux were locked in fierce competition to define what modern cleaning meant. Many vacuum cleaners represented a significant household expense during the Great Depression, at a time when families were carefully managing every dollar of household spending. Convincing a cash-strapped family to buy one meant proving it was more than a luxury. It had to feel like a smart investment. So manufacturers sold more than a machine. They sold an idea that owning one wasn't indulgence, it was progress. Hoover's Perivale factory in Britain, built in the early 1930s, became one of the country's major vacuum cleaner manufacturing sites, a symbol of just how seriously this industry was taken, combining engineering, mass manufacturing, and design under one roof. Step through the factory doors and the first thing that hits you is the noise. Presses stamping steel, motors being tested, workers moving briskly between stations. This was not a small workshop. Large factories of this kind employed hundreds of workers across different departments, each one assigned to a narrow, specific task. The building was divided by function. One wing handled sheet metal, another built motors, and another ran final assembly. In many large factories, production was organized so materials moved through different departments in sequence until a finished machine emerged at the end of the line. And here's what might surprise you. The factory wasn't automated in any modern sense. Not even close. Machines handled the heavy lifting, but human hands did the thinking, measuring, adjusting, correcting, the kind of precision no machine of that decade could replicate on its own. Before a single sheet of steel was cut, the vacuum cleaner existed only on paper, refined over weeks of drawings and revisions. Engineers had to fix the shape of the body, the motor's placement, the path air would travel through the machine, and how dust would be trapped without leaking back into the room. Then something shifted across the whole industry. Manufacturers realized people didn't just want a machine that worked. They wanted one that looked like it belonged in a modern home. Industrial designers were brought in, and vacuum shapes grew smoother and sleeker, borrowing curves from the same design movements shaping cars and radios of the era. Chapter 4. Choosing the materials. Many 1930s models were noticeably heavier than today's lightweight machines, built more like small tanks than the featherweight uprights we're used to now. Steel formed the body's backbone, chosen for its ability to survive years of hard daily use. The dust collection system relied on reusable cotton or canvas bags, sewn by hand and emptied the same way. Copper wiring carried the electrical current, rubber insulation kept it contained, and precisely wound motor coils powered the fan system that created the suction strength needed to lift dirt from deep within a rug's fibers. A surviving Hoover Senior model from the early 1930s shows many of these traditional materials, including metal construction and fabric components typical of the period. Every curved vacuum shell began as a flat, unremarkable sheet of steel. Workers measured and cut these sheets to size before feeding them into heavy industrial presses that shaped the flat metal into the familiar curved housing through powerful pressing operations. Accuracy mattered here more than almost anywhere else in the process. A single misaligned cut could mean a body that never sealed properly, killing suction before the machine ever left the factory. Once shaped, the metal was drilled for mounting points, then smoothed and cleaned in preparation for paint. This was the part that actually brought the machine to life. Workers wound copper wire around metal cores to build the motor windings, then fitted brushes and bearings to keep everything spinning with minimal friction. These motors operated at high speeds and required careful balancing to run properly. But here's the catch. Even a motor imbalanced by the smallest amount could turn a promising machine into a noisy, shuddering mess. So every single motor was tested for balance before installation, because nobody wanted their brand new symbol of modern living to sound like a startled goose having a bad morning. With a body and motor ready, the machine still needed a way to actually collect dirt. The spinning motor powered an internal fan, generating the airflow that pulled dust and debris inward. Many models added a rotating brush to help loosen dirt trapped deep in carpet fibers before the airflow carried it away. The dirt then traveled into a fabric bag, hand-cut and stitched from cotton or canvas, fitted with metal connectors to attach securely to the body. Every seam was checked by hand. This was a time when skilled workers played a crucial role in catching mistakes before products reached customers. On the assembly line, motor, fan, wiring, wheels, and dust bag came together into one finished unit. These early assembly lines allowed factories to produce far more machines, far faster than the older workshop methods they replaced, where production depended much more on individual craftsmanship rather than specialized assembly. Once assembled, machines moved to finishing. Paint protected the steel and gave it a polished look, while company branding was stamped on so customers instantly recognized the name behind it. Manufacturers understood they weren't just selling suction, they were selling a small vision of the future. Before leaving the factory, every unit faced inspection. Workers verified suction power, checked electrical safety, and listened for unusual motor noise. Machines that failed any part of this process were pulled aside and corrected before they were allowed anywhere near a customer, because a single faulty machine reaching someone's home could damage a brand's reputation for years. Once approved, machines were boxed with an instruction manual and shipped to stores, marketed not as an appliance, but as a promise. A cleaner home in far less time for far less effort. Built to last. Unlike many products today, a vacuum cleaner in the 1930s was not something families expected to replace every few years. It was a major purchase, and manufacturers knew it. Durability wasn't a nice bonus. It was the entire pitch. A machine that broke down within a year wasn't just a bad product, it was a broken promise. And a failure like that could damage customer trust at a time when reputation mattered greatly. That's why so much of what you've just seen, the careful motor balancing, the hand-checked seams, the strict inspection line, existed for one reason. These machines were built to serve a household for years, not months. The vacuum cleaners of the 1930s were heavier, louder, and far simpler than the machines quietly running through homes today. No smart sensors, no lightweight plastics, and definitely no app gently reminding you to empty the bag. Back then, if you forgot, the machine just quietly stopped caring about your carpet. But they were built with real durability, careful engineering, and an enormous amount of manual skill. And they became an important part of the growth of the modern home appliance industry. Behind every one of these machines was a story of workers winding copper coils, testing motors by hand, and shaping steel into something that would outlast most of them.
And that machine you pictured at the start, the one being built piece by piece in a factory nearly a century ago, is, in a strange way, still spinning quietly inside every vacuum cleaner running today.